Hello, everyone. Johannes Keating here. I thought it was time to respond to another subscriber's request. It was a two-parter. I'm going to respond to the second part of the question today and get to the first part some other time. The second part of the question has to do with how do we work with people on the autism spectrum disorder? Are we asking them to do something that they're not neurologically capable of, connecting to their feelings? And in terms of differential diagnoses, how do we differentiate someone on the autism spectrum versus someone with simply really well-honed defenses against emotional closeness? What a fabulous question, and not an easy one, actually. So I'm not going to speak about autism specifically because it's frankly outside of my scope, but I will speak to any endogenous condition. So any condition that's neurological or biological, simply not caused by psychodynamic factors, right? It's not related to how we deal or how the person deals with interpsychic conflicts, feelings, anxiety, and defense. Okay, so one way this often shows up in the consulting room is someone will say, well, I'm depressed and but it's chemical. It has to do with my brain chemistry. So this isn't about autism per se, but this is about anything that's endogenous. So first and foremost, there's two things to consider. There's the scenario where the patient tells you, hey, this is my condition, right? And then there's the scenario where the patient does not tell you that this is their condition, but you're wrestling with your own suspicions. Okay, so let's talk about two scenarios. They're different. All right, let's talk about the first scenario first. This is where your client tells you, well, I have autism or I have depression, but it's, it's a result of biochemistry. Okay, so at that point, right, what I tend to do is I tend to say something to the effect of, well, given that you're thinking that this is endogenous, psychotherapy isn't necessarily going to help you, right? So my question for you, and this is directed to the client at this point. So my question for you is this, that do you believe that all of your symptoms are explained by this biochemistry or the neurological situation, right? Do you think that all of your symptoms are explained by that? Or do you think that it's possible that a portion, maybe even a small portion, could be explained by other factors, like how you deal with your inner life, thoughts, feelings, desires, fears, right? And a lot of times, the response will be, well, it's possible that like maybe 10% of what I'm struggling with, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, whatever it might be, right? It's possible that a smaller portion, let's say 5 or 10%, is caused by psychodynamic factors. It's caused by how I'm dealing or not dealing with my feelings, right? At which point my response will be, I see. In that case, I can only help you with those 5 or 10%. Will that still be worth it to you? So you basically turn it back to the patient or the client and draw them out in terms of what their thinking is about the situation. Explain that what you do can't help with endogenous conditions, and that if they believe that a portion, even if it's a small portion, could have a psychodynamic etiology. I wouldn't use that word psychodynamic since that's therapists speak. I would just say caused by how you deal with your emotions, right? So that's plain English, right? That's important. Maybe they'll say, no, it's all endogenous. I don't think it's related at all to how I deal with my emotions. At which point I would say, well, then I don't think I can help you. Maybe you need to see, get some pharmacology and see a psychiatrist or something else. But at least the kind of psychotherapy that I do is not able to help with those sort of things. So that's my approach in scenario number one. In scenario number two, when the patient is not reporting that they identify as having autism or endogenous depression or what have you, but you're simply wondering, okay, here, the way to go about it, at least from my point of view, is to approach emotionally charged topics, simply asking what brings them to therapy is emotionally charged, asking them to give specific examples of the problems, or asking for the patient to be more specific, asking about their emotions. If you do all of that without being unduly provocative, meaning confrontational, but simply in a matter-of-fact, calm, genuine, interested, curious place, if you come from a curious place, without sort of premature challenge or something like that, or undue pressure in your tone, um, and I'll mention why that's important in just a minute here, but basically pursue emotionally charged threads, okay, and then very, very closely monitor for fluctuation in anxiety and in symptoms, meaning defenses, okay? If there are no fluctuations at all, especially as you begin to press a little bit, okay, that would point to a different etiology, an endogenous etiology, perhaps, as opposed to a psychodynamic one. So that's the basic principle. But now, full circle back to what I said I would come back to. You want to be really careful that you're not provoking a reaction that begins to show these fluctuations. In other words, that you're not creating an iatrogenic reaction. Like, for example, to make it obvious here, if you throw a glass of water in someone's face, and I hope you never do, you never should, but let's say in order to illustrate this point, you throw a glass of water in the patient's face, and you go, oh, there's a fluctuation. They got pissed at me. This must be psychodynamic, right? Well, no, because it would be, anybody, even those, with autism or whatever, would have a strong reaction to that. They would be provoked. It's like, welcome to being human, regardless of your, the etiology of your mental health condition, okay? So you don't want to create an iatrogenic reaction. So for that reason, it's critical that you're not overly pressuring or overly challenging. You want to take a very sort of matter-of-fact, calm, I'm simply interested in understanding you, tact. It's very critical in order to rule out an iatrogenic response from the patient. We have to always be on guard and guard ourselves against confirmation bias. As a species, we're so good at finding what we're looking for. And so, okay. So as long as you're ruling out that you yourself are creating an iatrogenic response, then that's a really good way of going about it, meaning approach emotionally charged topics and then very, very closely monitor the response. Now, something to keep in mind, as you're looking for fluctuations in anxiety and in symptoms, in severity or onset of symptoms, when you pursue these emotionally charged threads. So as you're doing that, pay particular attention to, keep an eye on gaze avoidance, okay? Because whether your client has autism or something else, they do have control over what they do with their eyeballs. You can't say, well, my neurology is such that I can't make eye contact. No, they can. Everybody can make eye contact. It might bring things up for you, for the client, but they certainly can. So that's a beachhead you want to attend to. So as soon as you notice eye contact, you can say, I'm noticing, do you notice that you're looking over there instead of at me? And if you actually look me in the eye, what happens inside of you? What happens with your state of mind? What happens with your internal experience? What happens with stress levels? And if the patient reports a change of status of their state of mind when they look you in the eye, well, you're in a psychodynamic universe at that point. Okay. And then again, going back to differentiating, maybe 90% of your symptomatology is neurological or endogenous in one form or fashion. And that part I can't help you with, but now we're seeing some evidence that a portion of this seems to be how you deal with your feelings, that there's feelings about making eye contact with me. And You seem to get anxious and then prefer to look away and avoid my eyes. Do you see that as well? Okay, so that would be the beachhead there. Thank you so much for that question. It's a lovely one and a difficult one. So I really appreciate it. And I'll get to the part one of this question as time permits. Thank you, everyone. Until next time. Bye-bye.